Your parents bought their first house at 25 with a high school diploma and a handshake. You're 32 with a college degree, a decent job, and you still can't afford a studio apartment in a neighborhood where your car won't get stolen. What happened? Did young people suddenly become lazy? Did avocado toast really destroy an entire generation's ability to build wealth? Or did the entire housing market transform into an impossible game that's rigged against anyone under 40? Spoiler alert, it's not the avocados. The American housing market has become an absolute nightmare. And today, we're going to break down exactly how the dream of home ownership turned into a fever dream that most young Americans will never wake up from. Let's talk about why your generation is screwed. Act 1. Your parents' housing market versus yours. How it used to work. Let's time travel back to 1985. Your dad just graduated high school, got a job at the local factory, and decided to buy a house. The median home price was about $80,000. His salary at that factory job, around $25,000 a year. Do the math. The house cost roughly 3 times his annual salary. He saved up for a down payment, got a mortgage, and boom, homeowner at 23. He'll spend the next 30 years telling you about hard work and responsibility. Now, let's look at today. You graduated college in 2020. You've got student loans, but you also landed a decent job making $55,000 a year. Not bad, right? You're making more than your dad did, adjusted for inflation. You should be able to afford a house easily, except the median home price in America is now $400,000. That's more than 7 times your annual salary. In desirable cities, try 10 times, 12 times, in some places 15 times your annual salary. Your dad needed to save up 3 years of income. You need to save up 7 to 10 years. And that's assuming you're not spending any money on food, rent, or existing while you save. The numbers don't lie. Let's break this down with actual math because the numbers are genuinely insane. In 1985, the median home price to median income ratio was 3.5 to 1. Today, it's 7.7 to 1. That's not a small increase. That's more than double. The game fundamentally changed. But wait, it gets worse. Interest rates in the 1980s were high, like 12 to 15%. Today, they're lower, around 7%. So doesn't that balance things out? No, because even with lower interest rates, your monthly payment on a $400,000 house is still around $2,500. Add in property taxes, insurance, and maintenance, and you're looking at $3,000 a month minimum. To qualify for that mortgage, banks want your housing costs to be no more than 30% of your income. That means you need to be making at least $10,000 a month or $120,000 a year. And you need to have saved $80,000 for a 20% down payment so you don't get crushed by PMI, which is private mortgage insurance. Oh, and you need a good credit score and stable employment history and low debt-to-income ratio. Good luck with all that when you're carrying $60,000 in student loans. The affordability crisis in real terms. Here's what this looks like in practice. In 1985, a young person working full-time at minimum wage could afford to buy a modest starter home in most American cities. Not a mansion, not even a nice house, but a house. Today, someone making minimum wage would need to work for approximately 100 years to buy that same house. And that's not accounting for the fact that they also need to eat and have shelter while saving. Even college graduates with decent jobs are priced out. The average 25-year-old today has less than $5,000 in savings. The average down payment needed is $60,000. You'd need to save for 12 years without spending a single dollar on anything else. This isn't a generational attitude problem. This is a mathematical impossibility. Act 2. What broke the housing market? Reason 1. Housing became an investment vehicle. Here's where things get dark. Housing used to be a place to live. Now it's treated as an investment asset, like stocks or gold. And when houses become investment vehicles, everything changes. Wealthy investors and corporations started buying up residential properties, not to live in them, to rent them out or flip them for profit. BlackRock, Invitation Homes, and dozens of other investment firms spent billions buying single-family homes across America. In some markets, investors brought 20 to 30% of all available homes. In hot markets like Phoenix, Austin, and Atlanta, it was even higher. These companies can pay cash, close quickly, and outbid any regular person trying to buy their first home. Why would a seller accept your offer when some corporation is offering $50,000 over asking price with no inspection and a 7-day close? They wouldn't. So you lose. Again and again and again. Reason 2. NIMBYs and zoning laws. NIMBYs stands for Not in My Backyard. These are homeowners who oppose any new housing development near them, and they have completely strangled housing supply in America. Want to build an apartment building? NIMBYs will show up to city council meetings and complain about traffic, parking, changing neighborhood character, and property values. Want to build townhouses? Same thing. Want to turn a single-family home into a duplex? Absolutely not. Zoning laws make it illegal to build anything except single-family homes in about 75% of residential land in major cities. This artificial restriction means we can't build enough housing to meet demand. California is the worst example. The state has gained millions of residents but barely built any new housing because every development gets blocked by NIMBYs. So prices skyrocket because there's nowhere to live. Cities like San Francisco have some of the strictest zoning laws in America. The median home price there is $1.4 million. A one-bedroom apartment costs $3,500 a month. You need to make over $200,000 a year to afford to live there. This didn't happen by accident. It happened because existing homeowners benefit from restricting supply. When supply is low and demand is high, their home values go up. They get richer while young people get locked out entirely. Reason 3? The 2008 housing crisis created a supply shortage. Here's an irony that'll make your head explode. The 2008 financial crisis was caused by too much risky lending and overbuilding. The solution to that crisis? Stop building houses. After 2008, new home construction collapsed. Builders went bankrupt. Workers left the industry. Banks stopped lending for new developments. For over a decade, America barely built any new housing. Meanwhile, the population kept growing. Millennials grew up and needed places to live, but there weren't enough houses being built to accommodate them. We're now short approximately 4 million housing units nationwide. 4 million homes that should exist, but don't because we stopped building after 2008. And here's the kicker. We can't just quickly build 4 million homes. Construction takes time. Materials are expensive. Labor is scarce. Regulations are complicated. Even if we started building at maximum speed today, it would take years to catch up. So you've got tons of buyers competing for not enough houses. Economics 101 says prices go up, way up. Reason 4, foreign investment and money laundering. Want to make this even more frustrating? Wealthy foreigners are buying American real estate as a safe place to park their money. Luxury condos in New York, Miami, and Los Angeles sit empty most of the year because they're just investment assets for oligarchs and billionaires. Some estimates suggest that 30 to 40% of luxury condos in Manhattan are barely occupied. They're essentially safe deposit boxes for foreign wealth. And since those buyers are paying cash and driving up prices, it affects the entire market. When luxury condos sell for $10 million, it pushes up prices for regular condos. Those regular condos push up prices for starter homes. Everything gets more expensive because the top of the market is detached from reality. Reason 5. Low interest rates created a buying frenzy. From 2008 to 2021, interest rates were historically low, like 2 to 3% for a mortgage. This was supposed to make housing more affordable because your monthly payments would be lower. Instead, it caused a buying frenzy. When money is cheap to borrow, people borrow more of it. Buyers who could afford a $300,000 house at 6% could now afford a $500,000 house at 3%, so they bid up prices. Sellers saw multiple offers on every house and raised their prices. Home values exploded. Then, in 2022, the Federal Reserve started raising interest rates to fight inflation. Suddenly, mortgages went from 3% to 7%. Monthly payments doubled for the same house price. But home prices didn't drop to compensate. They stayed high. So now you're paying high prices and high interest rates. You get the worst of both worlds. Anyone who bought a house in 2020 with a 3% mortgage is never selling, because getting a new house means taking on a 7% mortgage. So existing homes aren't hitting the market. Inventory stays low, prices stay high. You're competing for scraps, while people who already own homes are locked into amazing deals they'll never give up. Act 3. The ripple effects on your life. Renting forever means building zero wealth. Here's the part that really matters. Homeownership isn't just about having a place to live. It's the primary way middle-class Americans build wealth. When you pay rent, that money disappears forever. It goes to your landlord, who uses it to pay their mortgage, building their equity. You're literally paying for someone else to build wealth while you build nothing. When you pay a mortgage, you're building equity. Every payment increases your ownership stake in the property. After 30 years, you own it completely. It's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's your retirement fund. That's your financial security. The median net worth of homeowners in America is about $300,000. The median net worth of renters is about $8,000. Home ownership is the wealth gap. Your parents' generation bought homes in their 20s, paid them off by their 50s, and retired with valuable assets. Your generation rents forever, builds no equity, and has no wealth to retire on. This isn't just about having a nice house. This is about whether you'll have financial security in old age. Delayed life milestones. Not being able to afford a house delays everything else in life. Can't afford a house? You're probably delaying marriage because it's expensive and you don't have stability. Delaying marriage means delaying kids because you can't raise a family in a one-bedroom rental. The average age of first-time home buyers is now 36 years old. In 1985, it was 29. That's 7 years later. 7 years of paying rent instead of building equity. 7 years of instability. 7 years of not being able to start a family in your own home. And it's not just affecting individuals, it's affecting birth rates. America's birth rate has been declining for years, and housing affordability is a major reason. Young people can't afford to have kids when they can barely afford rent. Geographic inequality. Here's another fun problem. All the good jobs are in expensive cities. Tech jobs are in San Francisco and Seattle, where houses cost $1 million. Finance jobs are in New York, where apartments cost $4,000 a month. So you have a choice. Take a high-paying job in an expensive city where you'll never afford a house, or take a lower-paying job in an affordable city and still struggle to save money. Your parents' generation could work middle-class jobs in medium-sized cities and afford homes. Your generation needs to make 6 figures in a major city just to tread water. This creates geographic inequality, where entire generations are locked into renting in expensive cities, while their parents' generation owns property everywhere else. The mental health impact. Let's talk about something that doesn't show up in economic data. The psychological toll of knowing you'll never afford a house. There's a term for this. Housing insecurity. It's the constant stress of not knowing if you can afford next month's rent, of getting evicted because your landlord wants to raise rent by 30%, of moving every year because you're chasing slightly cheaper apartments. Housing insecurity is linked to depression, anxiety, and overall life dissatisfaction. When you don't have stable housing, you can't plan for the future. You can't invest in your community. You can't put down roots. roots. Your parents' generation could buy a house, settle down, and build a life. Your generation is trapped in a cycle of temporary rentals, constant moving, and perpetual instability. And society tells you it's your fault. You're not working hard enough. You're spending too much on coffee and subscriptions. You should have chosen a better major in college. But the data shows this is systematic. This is structural. The housing market fundamentally broke, and an entire generation is paying the price. Act 4. The fake solutions that don't work. Just move to a cheaper area. The most common advice is to move somewhere cheaper. Leave San Francisco, leave New York, move to Ohio or Kansas where houses are affordable. Great idea, except the jobs aren't there. Tech companies aren't in Ohio. Finance firms aren't in Kansas. The industries that pay well enough to save for a house are concentrated in expensive cities. Sure, you could buy a cheap house in rural America, but you'd be making $40,000 a year instead of $70,000, so you'd still struggle to save money, and you'd have fewer career opportunities. Some people can work remotely and move to cheaper areas. That worked during COVID, but now companies are forcing people back to offices, and remote work is disappearing. Also, when people started moving to cheaper cities, guess what happened? Those cities got expensive too. Austin used to be affordable, then everyone moved there and prices doubled. Boise was cheap, then remote workers flooded in and locals got priced out. You can't solve a national housing shortage by moving around. The problem follows you. Get a roommate. Another brilliant suggestion. Just get roommates. Share a house with 3 other people and split costs. Okay, but your parents didn't need roommates. They could afford their own place. Why should you have to live like a college student until you're 35? Also, good luck starting a family with roommates. Good luck building equity when you're renting. Roommates solve the problem of affording rent. They don't solve the problem of building wealth or home ownership. Save more and spend less. The classic boomer advice. Stop buying lattes and avocado toast. Cancel Netflix. Cut your spending. Save more. Let's do the math. If you cut out your $5 daily coffee, you'd save $1,800 a year. At that rate, you'd need to skip coffee for 33 years to save enough for a down payment on a median-priced home. Cutting small expenses doesn't solve the problem when the fundamental numbers don't work. You can't budget your way out of a housing market where prices increased faster than wages for 40 years. Government programs for first-time buyers. Some states offer first-time home buyer programs with lower down payments or assistance. Sounds helpful, right? The problem is these programs have income limits. If you make too much, you don't qualify. If you make too little, you can't afford the mortgage anyway. There's a narrow window where they help, and even then, you're still competing with investors paying cash. Also, these programs are tiny. They help maybe 5% of potential buyers. They don't solve the systematic shortage of housing. Act 5. What actually needs to happen. Build more housing everywhere. The only real solution is to build significantly more housing. Millions of units. Apartments, townhouses, condos, single-family homes, all of it. This means reforming zoning laws to allow more density, letting developers build apartment buildings in areas currently zoned only for single-family homes, allowing duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes on lots that currently only allow one house. Cities like Minneapolis and Portland have started doing this. They eliminated single-family-only zoning and allowed more housing types everywhere. Early results show increased supply and stabilized prices, but this requires political will. Existing homeowners fight this because they benefit from scarcity. Politicians are scared of upsetting homeowners because they vote reliably. We need to build 4 million housing units just to catch up with current demand. Then we need to keep building to accommodate future population growth. This is possible. We built housing at this scale in the 1950s and 60s. We just need to do it again. Restrict investor purchases. We need to limit how many homes corporations and investors can buy. Housing should be for living in, not for wealth storage. Some cities have started taxing vacant homes owned by foreign investors. Vancouver implemented a vacancy tax and it helped. Other cities are considering banning corporate purchases of single-family homes entirely. This won't won't solve everything, but it would remove some of the competition. If regular families aren't bidding against billion-dollar investment firms, prices would stabilize. Make renting less exploitative. Until we solve the ownership problem, we need to make renting more bearable. Rent control that prevents massive yearly increases, stronger tenant protections against arbitrary evictions, requirements that rentals meet basic standards. Landlords currently have all the power. Tenants have almost none. Rebalancing that relationship would help millions of renters, even if they never buy homes. Except that home ownership might become rare. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Even with all these solutions, home ownership might never return to the levels your parents' generation enjoyed. In many European countries, home ownership rates are much lower. In Germany, only 50% of people own homes. In Switzerland, it's 40%. People rent their entire lives, and it's considered normal. Maybe that's America's future. Maybe home ownership becomes a luxury that only the wealthy can afford, and everyone else rents forever. That would require a massive cultural shift. Americans have been taught that home ownership is essential to the American dream. Giving up on that dream is psychologically difficult. But maybe we need to redefine success. Maybe we need better protections for renters so that renting isn't financial quicksand. Maybe we need to find other ways to build wealth besides home ownership. This isn't ideal. This isn't fair. But it might be realistic. So here's where we are. The housing market is fundamentally broken for young Americans. Prices have increased way faster than incomes. Supply is artificially restricted. Investors are buying up available homes. Interest rates are high. Down payment requirements are massive. Your parents bought homes in their 20s with modest incomes. You can't afford a house in your 30s with a college degree and a good job. This isn't because you're lazy or financially irresponsible. This is because the system changed. The solutions exist. We could build more housing. We could restrict investor purchases. We could reform zoning laws. But those solutions require political will that currently doesn't exist. So what do? You keep saving. You keep looking. Maybe you get lucky. Maybe you inherit money. Maybe you buy something small and imperfect just to get in the market. Or maybe you accept that you'll rent forever and try to build wealth through other means, investing in stocks, building a business, saving aggressively in retirement accounts. The American dream of home ownership isn't dead for everyone, but for millions of young Americans, it's on life support. And the saddest part? Your parents probably don't understand why you can't just do what they did, because from their perspective, they worked hard and bought a house. Why can't you? The answer is math. The numbers don't work anymore. The game changed. The ladder was pulled up. Welcome to the modern housing market, where owning a home is almost impossible, and everyone older than you thinks it's your fault. Thanks for watching Not Rich Enough. If this video made you angry about the housing market, hit that like button and subscribe for more videos about why your generation can't have nice things. See you next time.